This review is of ASUS support. Starting in September, I contacted ASUS with questions about parts and for computers for my son and I that I wanted to use with the motherboards that I got that were ASUS B660M with Wi-Fi DDR4 and H670 Pro with Wi-Fi with DDR4 motherboards. And I had questions about air cooling versus all-in-one cooling, which are liquid cooling. And as well as what are the best fans to use to cool the case, whether the RAM that I had ordered for my son and I was compatible, and also why I could not get the SSDs that I had bought for us to work correctly in those motherboards. And my initial experience was a little bit slow because they try to relegate everything to either chat or to email. And in the case of chat, the chat agents are assigned to so many customers that they can't keep track of what's going on. They become confused. They repeat questions. They don't pay attention to what you say. And it basically ends up being chaotic and frustrating. And eventually, I think I was in that chat for 10-15 minutes and I just gave up and called. And so as time passed, things just seemed to go downhill. So, I initially, as of early October, October 10th, I believe it was, had finally gotten all the answers to my questions about everything except for the SSD, which I didn't know about yet. So I was able to order the other parts that I needed for my son and I. And then I contacted ASUS again because the SSD, which was from Team Group, it was the T-Create 1 terabyte classic, PCIe 4x4 NVMe SSD. And it turned out that the solution, which I had to figure out on my own, because ASUS never, ever gave me a solution and never tried to actually problem solve it or troubleshoot it, I should say. How do I say this? I have a string of emails from them every few days in October, then a little bit in November, and the last one I got was yesterday. So it became increasingly confusing because when I first called up, or when I first gave up on the chat, and I called up, the agent asked me a few questions, didn't seem to take notes. And the reason I say that is because after he was done, he didn't troubleshoot. He didn't ask me questions about the BIOS settings that would have allowed him to identify the mistake that I had made where I had turned on rapid storage technology, which would have solved it within just a few short minutes. And had he bothered to think, well, it's showing up as a RAID drive that could probably be related to rapid storage technology from Intel. So he wanted to send me instructions to troubleshoot the problem. He wanted to send it to me in email. He sent it to me, but it was useless. Partially because he had not listened to or written down what I had told him in our conversation. Partially because he would reference things that he, I guess, assumed that I would know about and I didn't, such as Silverstone and also the Z97 chipset. He also ignored the fact that one of the first instruction he gave was to go into BIOS and go into CSM to enable UEFI, which was already enabled. But in order to use CSM, you have to have a graphics card. And in my son's computer, which was the one I was building at the time, didn't have a graphics card, so there was no way for me to use that set of instructions that he gave. So I couldn't do anything about it. And the other instructions were just, again, some of them were Well, one thing that he did wrong was he said this: if none of these steps have any results, it is highly likely the card is not fully compatible in BIOS level, but physically works so OS can see it. Now, here's the thing: I had told him I was unable to install Windows on it because Windows couldn't see it. And second of all, he placed that immediately after the part where he was telling me to go into CSM and turn on UEFI and turn on Legacy and stuff. And instead of placing it at the very bottom of the list. And he also mentioned SATA. Now, SATA is an older technology for storage drives. And I had mentioned that I had PCIe, not SATA, for my SSD. But he brought it up anyways. And it was just a travesty of instructions, because when he should have given me a link, like when he said check the motherboard to see if it's compatible with the SSD, he didn't give me a link. When he told me to check Silverstone to see if it's UEFI or Legacy, he didn't give me a link. But there's no way it would have been Legacy because it's a brand new SSD. It couldn't be Legacy. It's impossible. It just was bad. And I wrote back, explaining most of those things. I didn't notice about the SATA thing, but most of those things. And nobody ever responded to those questions and concerns and errors that were made. And in fact, although the matter of, by October 10th, the matter of questions on coolers and memory and stuff had all been resolved by two, Romeo and Thomas. I got, that I know of, 2 emails from ASUS about all-in-one coolers. I had already received all the information I needed about all-in-one coolers, and yet somebody brought it up. 2 different people brought it up, actually. Let's see, who were those 2 people? One of them was Ivan Henry D. on October 16th, and the other was Jasper S. on October 22nd. I have no idea why, when all the questions that I previously asked prior to the SSD issue, it's just, we're finished. We're done. So then, to compound matters, they used 2 different case numbers. And it didn't make any sense to mix 2 different case numbers together, and to mix 2 different topics together is just dumb. I mean, you don't do that, because it just confuses the customer. It confuses what is being addressed, what's not being addressed, and it just causes lots of trouble. And so most of the time, in most of the messages that I received from them, all it had was this service or case number, and sometimes it mentioned RMA, and sometimes it didn't, because one of the first conclusions I got from both Team Create and ASUS was, we need to do an RMA. And RMAs weren't needed. To jump to the conclusion of needing an RMA, again, this was both ASUS and Team Create jumping right away to the conclusion of RMAs, is stupid. Because all you need to do is do a little bit of troubleshooting. You're going to save your company time and money, and save aggravation for the customer, confusion for the customer, and so on and so forth. So as of yesterday, that was the last email I received from them, and they were patting themselves on the back for having resolved an issue for me. I don't know which issue they think they've resolved for me, other than the ones that were resolved like 2 months ago, about all my questions, except for the SSD, which I resolved on the very same day I received those instructions from Harvey. So initially, I had a fairly positive, but not entirely positive, opinion of ASUS's customer and technical support service. But the more time passed, the more it kind of just unraveled and made me feel gosh, I kind of wish I hadn't bought an ASUS product now because the support team is incompetent. So just to kind of wrap up here, since I've already been babbling for 10 minutes, ranting, the issues I encounter in dealing with ASUS include: it takes too long to get responses, and the responses are often erroneous. This is not acceptable. Now, when I say erroneous, sometimes it was because they weren't paying attention to what I had already told them. Sometimes it was because of a language barrier, where they didn't understand what I told them. And sometimes I don't know why. The second issue was service or case numbers being used for more than one topic, usually without an indication of which a topic is being addressed. There should be separate case numbers for each issue, and the topics should be addressed or stated. Third one is robotic subject lines with no topic indicated. All you've got is this service number with a long string of letters and numbers. This this just confuses people because they're like, well, how you expect? I'm not a computer. Do you really expect most customers to remember this massive service number, especially when you're conflating different topics into it? And then in the emails, there's usually no topic information in the, 15, 20 emails that I received from them. There was no history. So previous messages, previous communication, or the original question or complaint that had been given to ASUS was not mentioned at all. In addition to the fact that all they basically would say most of the time was, thanks for your patience, and sorry about the wait, and we're grateful you're letting us continue to serve you, and we're working on it, and we'll get back to you into 24 to 48 hours, or maybe more. The next issue was that the tech support agents have, as I mentioned before, have an inferior understanding of English, which led to mistakes on their part. Also, they did not pay attention to and take notes about what customers like myself say and write, and thus didn't solve problems properly or at all. That's a pretty bad problem. Next, the chat agents are required to serve too many customers simultaneously, causing very poor service. I never want to have to chat with ASUS again. And I don't want to have to email with them again, for that matter. Tech support agents in chat and on the phone are not trained well enough. I mean, I can tell this from my interactions with them. They don't ask the right questions. They don't troubleshoot correctly. I have decades of experience in this, so it's not like I don't know what I'm talking about. I've done tech support. I've been doing IT for longer than these people have probably been alive. Phone support agents seem to be trained to get off a call as soon as possible so that the matter can be dealt with in email. That means that the resolution can be dragged out for days, weeks, or in this case, apparently months, since we're talking about almost 2 months since I originally contacted ASUS about the SSD problem, which, by the way, within 24 hours of resolving the problem, I wrote back to ASUS and I told them it's been resolved. And then when they continued to email me, I told them it's been resolved. And then when they emailed me about the all-in-one coolers, I said, I don't know why you're writing to me. This has been answered already. And then when they wrote to me again about it, I was like, I don't know why you're writing to me about this. This has nothing to do with what I wanted to know about. And there's nothing I want to know about right now because I resolved it in October when Harvey and the other guy failed to troubleshoot the issue correctly by actually just looking at, asking me to look at my settings and thinking, what would cause an SSD to be signed to RAID? And they should have known that it was Intel Rapid Storage Technology. So ultimately, I guess I would have given them like a 3.5 stars, maybe 4 stars initially in my experience with ASUS. But as of now, it's 2 stars, and it's unfortunate. And so I've just written and sent off an email to them detailing these problems, and I sent it to the management team. Hopefully, they'll get off their butts and they'll get their heads out of their butts. Can you imagine that? Having your head in your butt and then sitting on it? Ouch. And they'll get this resolved because, good Lord, it's got to be for less technical people than me, and I'm not the big wig expert. I couldn't do like a technical computer channel like they have on YouTube. I don't know enough, and I don't have a team. So I can only imagine how regular customers feel and how many regular customers have been given bad information or been confused to the point where they just gave up. And ASUS has been around a long time and they have a great reputation for their products, but holy crap, their service sucks. Have to be honest. Thanks for watching and hope you have a great day.